All right, go ahead and turn to the Gospel of Matthew. Sometimes some things are better left unsaid. All right. Matthew, turn to the Gospel of Matthew. I believe chapter 10 is where we're going to be. This is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to use Matthew 10, one verse, to lay a foundation that we're then going to go to the Gospel of Luke and build upon. Now, you know what that means. That means we'll probably never get to the Gospel of Luke because we have a verse to take apart in the Gospel of Matthew. So, yeah, I know it's only one verse, but it's very foundational, and when it's foundational, I have to really take it apart. So we're gonna do an outline of a verse. So that's what we're going to do. All right. So Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. This morning, I was looking at all the statistics for all of our podcasts, and I was like, man, people in Victory are doing really good. The Abilene numbers are up. I'm impressed. And then I find out today that's not you guys. Okay, it's someone else in Abilene who's listening, and I'm like, okay, what is going on? So, but we do have someone listening to us in Abilene, and they want me to possibly do a response to Kanye's concert tonight at Joel Osteen's church. So, we'll see if I will make no one's going to like it because I think the album is garbage, and I obviously don't agree with Joel Osteen's theology, but I will say this about Kanye. He's not going to say what everyone wants him to say. He's going to say whatever he wants to say, no matter who it offends. So I do respect that. But the main thing is so much is happening right now with the situation that Christians are doing the typical Christian thing. You either got one side saying, well, he professes to be a Christian, now he's going to have to pass 14 tests before we think he's a Christian. Or, hey, he's a Christian, so immediately the album is supposedly good just because it's Christian. And the Christianity in an album doesn't make an album good. The musical ability and structure is what makes an album good. So, yeah, so we'll see if we'll talk about that. But it is good that we have people in the local area listening. That's always good news because it's never anyone here. It's always people somewhere else. So. No, I'm saying outside of this church. Right. Yeah. I don't know. It's just like, record something to respond to Kanye at Joel Osteen's church. There's a million different directions I could go with that. A million different directions I could go. Yeah. He probably doesn't know my answer. My answer is like, let's start with the beginning of music. All right. Okay, all right. And then it's like, now we're on part 47 of my response, and they're like, I don't care anymore. Kanye died 5 years ago. Okay, so yeah, some people don't know when they ask a question what they're going to get. All right, so Ripley Kunkel, she responded. She listened to I think part 1 of my look at Bethel Church in Redding, California. She was like, "This is sad," and I'm like, "I know it's sad." So, oh, okay, we'll see. Oh, that's right. Okay, you got some charismatic influence. So yeah, there you go. All right, Matt, that's why you were a heretic when you arrived here. Okay, there you go. All right. Okay. Yeah, Matt. Yeah, when y'all gave me the definition of the Trinity, I was like, I almost started crying and said, I got to get out of the state of Texas fast. Okay. Yeah, that was so heretical. All right, Matthew chapter 10. Everybody ready? Now, if you turn to Matthew chapter 10, what's going on in Matthew chapter 10? A lot of red letters. Jesus is called the 12 disciples, and now he's giving him their commission to go out. Now, always remember, whenever he gives these commissions to the 10 or the 12 or the 70, whatever, whoever he's giving the commission to, always remember that sometimes contained in those words are principles and ideas that no one follows in modern times, right? Even though sometimes people will try to take some verses out of it. Just know, for example, he tells them to go forward and cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils, freely you have received, freely give, heal the sick. All right, well, obviously that stuff is not, even though charismatics claim it's happening every week, there's no tangible proof that they're raising the dead every week. Correct? All right, so we're like, that's an apostolic commission with an apostolic ability. Would everyone agree? All right, then the next verse says to do what? Provide neither gold, nor silver, nor brass in your purses, nor script for your journey, neither two coats, neither shoes, nor yet staves, for the workman is worthy of his meat. All right, basically what they're saying is, hey, I'm going to send you out basically on a missionary journey. Don't take anything. Nobody follows that because missionaries today will have to go around for 2 years going to churches to ask for money before they get to the mission field. I hate that system. I hate that system so much because, especially for a small church, I'll get a phone call, well, we're missionaries and we'd like to come to your church. Okay, for them just to show up, right? Well, we all know we don't want them just to leave empty-handed, right? So they show up to present something, so then you drop $500-$600 to kind of say, and all you really did is paid for their trip here. Then you have to decide, okay, well, if you're going to come here, then you almost feel obligated, I'm going to have to support you. Well, now you may be supporting them for a year before they even get to the mission field. And remember, we were supporting that one individual from Rock, whatever it was like a prison, and he wasn't even on the mission field. He had quit. And we were sending money. And then I contacted their mission board, and I'm like, where's our money going to? And like, oh, well, we're apologetic. Apologetic is not the issue. That's wrong, okay? We should have been notified immediately, and the check should have been returned, okay? So, but that's the kind of things that happen because the system is broken. I've always said what should occur is if you're in a church and you want to be a missionary, that church should do everything in its power to support them immediately and get them on the mission field. Here's the money, go. Right? And do everything humanly, everything and within their power to do. Don't be walking around for 2 years trying to earn the money. So nobody follows that. Everyone agrees? All right, so now this is the danger. There are things here clearly we don't follow, but within these commands for them to do something, there can be principles that we can learn from. Does everybody understand how to draw the distinction there? In other words, it's not necessarily prescribing how we should act. It's describing what they were to do. But in that description, there can be some principles that we can draw from. Does that make sense? Like we can draw the principle there, we are to trust God in whatever we do. Correct? Now, it doesn't mean we have to just take off with no money. It just means that there needs to be a trust for God. Does everybody see how to draw a principle from it? Okay. Well, the verse I want to look at is verse 16. This is the verse we're going to use to build a foundation. All right? Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. All right? Let's read it again. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now, as soon as we read this, we can say, okay, there's a principle here that we can all relate to. Because he's sending them into the midst of wolves. In other words, he's going to send them into a very dangerous situation where there's people who, if they're wolves and they're sheep, right? Wolves, may want a snack one night and they devour the sheep, right? The wolves devour the sheep, right? Okay, so this is a dangerous situation. Well, we know from other passages of Scripture that Jesus says we are to be in the world, but not of it. So we face a similar difficult situation. So therefore, there are some principles here that we need to build on. And what we're going to do is once we build these principles, we're going to go to Luke and kind of see an example. All right? So let's outline this. All right? I have... a 3-point outline. Why? Because we're Baptist, right? Does that sound good? All right. No, I just came up with 3. All right. Here we go. What do we see in this verse? What's the first thing we see? All right, we see ascending. Okay, this is the way I placed it in my outline. I did a little more interpretation here. We see a dangerous reality. They're being sent into a dangerous reality. All right, everyone agree? Right? What's the dangerous reality that they're being sent into? They're being sent into the midst of wolves. Now, does he mean literal wolves? Oh, everyone's sure that he doesn't mean literal wolves? Okay. Well, okay, let's see how it reads. I just like to challenge you here. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. As sheep in the midst of wolves, all right? So if everyone here says it's not literal wolves, right, because obviously they're not literal sheep, okay, all right, so you prove your point. Now it's your job to do as a Bible student? Nope. You're going to identify with the wolves. You're going to say they're not literal wolves. You've got to prove to me what they are. Okay? That gives you maybe a hint, right? She wants to look at the next verse. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. You shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake, for a testimony against them and the Gentiles. All right. This seems to describe that the wolves are connected with what? There's kind of two kinds of authorities being spoken of here in those next two verses. What are the two authorities you kind of possibly see represented in those two verses? Okay. Well, the councils are probably connected with the synagogue in that verse. Would you agree? Right? So that'd be religious authority. And then the next verse, civil. So they're going to be sent into a dangerous reality composed of religious authority and civil authority that is going to be in opposition to them. Now that may not be a definitive proof of who the wolves are, so we may have to do a little cross-referencing. Go to Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. Say amen when you're there. All right. Matthew 7:15. Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Now, this really increases the danger, right? Because not only are you being sent in the midst of wolves, they don't look like wolves. They may look like sheep. So that tells you, where is your danger possibly going to be found? Right in the midst of those who claim to be what you are. Those who claim faith. Those who claim to be Christian. Now this increases the danger 900-fold. Right? It's easy, and I've always said this before. If I walk up to a place where there's a number of stores, right? And I pull up in my car and I look, and over here is the First Occult Bookstore of Abilene, Texas. And next to it is the Christian bookstore. My immediate idea is, which one is dangerous? The occult. But in reality, the danger is in the Christian bookstore, because what do you do in the Christian bookstore? You just lower your guard, you turn off your discernment. You're not even going to walk in the occult store, right? Okay? And you're going to walk over there and you're going to be like, okay, buy this book and this book. And you have no idea, though. There's no doctrinal test for books that show up in a Christian bookstore. You can get everything from oneness Pentecostals to absolutely insane charismatics to everything in between. There's no rule. There's no rhyme. You don't have a clue. You don't know what you're going to get. That's danger, because they appear as what? In sheep's clothing, because it's in a Christian bookstore. That preacher is on Christian radio. That preacher you saw on TV at 5:30 in the morning held up a Bible. Right? That creates danger. Go to Acts chapter 20. Acts chapter 20. All right, Acts chapter 20. Paul's getting ready to depart, calls a bunch of people together. Okay, starting in verse 28. Acts chapter 20, verse 28. Everybody there? Take heed therefore unto yourselves and to all the flock over the which the Holy Ghost hath made you overseers, to feed the church of God, which he hath purchased with his own blood. For I know this, that after my departing... So Paul's going to leave, and what's going to happen after he leaves? Grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Now, where are they coming? They're going to come inside. And nobody's going to have we need to see your credentials. Are you sheep or a wolf? There's no way to see the credentials until the damage starts, until the disease begins to be spread, until they start devouring people, right? So if you think about it, that's a dangerous situation. And I think I think that that's sometimes I don't know if Christians truly take that danger serious, right? Because, I mean, I could come up here and ask 10 doctrinal questions. I mean, I started before we started, the difference between deism and theism. You should know the difference, because what if you're hearing someone preaching deism and you don't even know the difference, right? I mean, I can give all day long. Like when I post the sermons from Bethel, I'm trying to force everyone else. I'm not telling you what's in it that's good or what's in it that's bad. I'm just playing the whole sermon, and then it's your job to use discernment to be able to go, And you should be able to do it with any sermon. You should be able to determine what is right and what's wrong. And not just to be critical, but look, your discernment is only as good as the amount of time you spend using it. Discernment, it doesn't just happen. And if you can't discern, then you're vulnerable. And we have to understand we are being sent into a dangerous reality, a dangerous situation. All right? Agreed? All right? So, go back to Matthew chapter 10. So can we agree that when it comes to wolves, we have the following? We'll look at a couple of verses. We kind of jumped because someone mentioned it, but that's fine. Go to Matthew chapter 10. All right, everybody there? I'm in Luke. I was like, what? Makes no sense. Okay, here we go. Matthew chapter 10. All right, so we've seen verse 16, and the first part of our outline is they're being sent into a dangerous reality. Everybody see that? And what's the dangerous reality? Wolves. How have we identified the wolves? Can we all agree that there's no question that wolves are false teachers? Yes? Okay. And then verses 17 and 18 and verse 21 gives us some other ideas of the wolves. We've kind of already mentioned it, but we'll just organize this so that you have it organized in your notes. Verse 17, but beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. So you have false teachers as wolves, religious authority as wolves. All right, religious authority as wolves, false teachers as wolves, right? Now what do we have in 18? And you shall be brought before governors and kings for my sake. That is, civil authority can sometimes be a wolf, seeking to devour and destroy Christianity. And then we have a very shocking one. Look at verse 21. And the brother shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the child, and the child shall rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to. Literally, family can be a wolf. So that's a dangerous. Why is this a dangerous reality? Well, the first reason it's a dangerous reality is the false teaching wolves, they show up as sheep. That's dangerous. Civil authority is extremely dangerous. And why is it dangerous? They can shut you down completely, imprison you, take away your rights, and horrible things can happen. And we're not quite there yet, but every time there's some kind of new news, and you're kind of like, man, this person gets shut down on YouTube, and this person gets shut down on this, and this person gets shut down on that. Now, ultimately, we got to be careful and not overhype those situations, because it's YouTube's platform. They should be able to determine who's on it, who's not on it, just like some Christian platforms won't allow non-Christians to be on their platforms. So it just means we have to use the platforms that we have to speak up. But what ultimately, the sad part, what happens is then the non-Christians are never going to hear the Christian message, because the Christian message is going to be banned from anything that they're around. And that's always a negative thing. That's why we want our message everywhere. That's why our podcasts are on Spotify. It's all over the place. iHeartRadio, we're all over the place. And I was looking at the numbers. iHeartRadio is one of the number one places people listen to us. I didn't even know we were there. And I'm like, how did that happen? Okay, so that's probably meaning possibly people who are not Christians are hearing us. That's a good thing, right? Because we want the message to be somewhere else. Now, some may argue the way I teach would probably confuse lost people, but that's okay. We're not afraid of questions, and nobody else should be afraid of questions. But you see how government could be a dangerous thing. Agreed? And then family is extremely dangerous. Because where will you have a tendency to possibly compromise first? With family. Because you don't want to do what? You don't want to cause a problem in family. Now, again, There's a balance here. When I was a young Christian, then I took the approach, I'm a Christian now, just go to war. Just declare war, go in, firebomb the place, and let whatever happens, happens. Okay, that's not the right way. But the other way is, let's not ever rock the boat. That's wrong too. There's a healthy balance. And you'll see here in a minute where that healthy balance shows up. Okay, so what's the first part of our outline? A dangerous reality, all right? We have identified the reality. What is the reality? There are wolves out there. We've identified the wolves. Who are the wolves? False teachers, religious authority, civil authority, and family. Right? Everyone agree that the text presents them as being dangerous? Everyone agree? Yes? Okay. All right. This brings us to number 2. All right? So we see a dangerous reality. What's the next thing we see in this verse? What's the next thing we see in this verse? Let me read it again. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Okay? All right? This is what I put for number 2. We see a dangerous reality. Number 2, we see a great need. What do we need? Right? The King James uses the word wise as a serpent. Everybody see that? Yes? Right? The NIV uses which word? Shrewd. Okay? Subtle, shrewd, wise. Right? What is it demonstrating? That we have a great need. We have a dangerous reality and we have a great need. If we're going to be in that reality, what do we need? Wisdom. We need to be shrewd. We need to be very smart, wise, clever, thinking people to know how to handle the dangerous reality. And he connects it to being wise as a serpent. Wise as a serpent. Now, that immediately makes us think of whom? Satan in Genesis 3, right? Now, Satan is using the serpent, but the serpent, how does the text say in Genesis 3? What does it say about the serpent? Yeah, look at Genesis 3. I think it's verse 1. It says something, now the serpent, and then describes it. Subtle, right? More subtle than any beast of the field. What does the word subtle mean? Cunning, shrewd, clever, can think through a situation. Now, it's just crazy. And how did Satan utilize, how did he demonstrate his shrewdness and his cleverness? How did he accomplish it? What's the steps he takes in Genesis 3? What does he take? What steps does he take? Hey, does he just show up and look at Eve and say, hey, go eat that tree? No, he engages her in what? A conversation, but he used what? Questions. He asked questions, right? He got questions, and through the use of questions, he got her to see almost, right, that the tree was good, right? That it could provide something really awesome, and he almost implied that who was holding back? God was holding back. He changed her perception. Instead of being afraid of the tree, he made it look like here's something positive. He was clever. He was shrewd. If you're going to be in a dangerous situation, you've got to be clever. You've got to be shrewd. You have to know how to handle the situation. You have to. And here's the thing. Sometimes we blow situations, do we not? I mean, we mess up so bad in how to handle them. Sometimes we say what we shouldn't say. Sometimes we don't say enough. Sometimes we say too more. Sometimes we say it in such a non-confrontational way that a person doesn't even know they've been confronted. They don't even really know because you were so nice about it. And then sometimes you can be so over-the-top confrontational that all they remember is the confrontation, don't even remember what was said. There's got to be a balance here. But you need to be clever. You need to be wise. Let me give you an example on the way here. In fact, I'll probably try to grab the audio, cut the audio, and throw it on a podcast, maybe tonight or tomorrow. But on the way here, I was listening to Stand to Reason. Comes on from 5 to 6 p.m. on 91.3. with Greg Koukl. It's an apologetics show, right? They always deal with great, interesting things from philosophy to all kinds of things. And a pharmacist called in. And the pharmacist was like, okay, here's the situation. I could be put in a situation where a parent comes in to get medication to basically stop hormone blockers for my child because the child, they believe, has gender dysphoria, some kind, and doesn't know what gender, so we're going to basically use drugs to stop puberty from happening. All right? So the pharmacist was like, so how do I confront the parent coming in, right? Well, Greg Koukl, he was trying to be nice, but I think he was kind of roundabout trying to say, you have a job, right? You wear the pharmacy coat, you work for a company, you're stepping outside of being a professional, and now you're trying to engage in this person's personal life. You're trying to engage your morality on them. Now, the person wasn't really catching on to that, and Greg Koukl wasn't very direct. I would have been far more direct here and go, no, look, I completely agree with hormone blockers for a child. I completely think that's horrific, horrible. If they have gender dysphoria, let's support them, and then let's see how it plays itself out. Once you start placing chemicals in the body, and especially if you start doing surgical procedure, there's no turning back. And once there's no turning back, that's horrible. And then, of course, the suicide rate in that culture is extremely high. Now, there's lots of possible reasons why. Some people blame Christians for the reason it's so high. I don't know if that's a good argument, but yeah, there could be. So we'll see. But that's a difficult question. Agreed? That's a difficult situation. When I was in the military, and I worked at the Erling Berquist Hospital in Omaha, the regional hospital there for Offutt Air Force Base, we started having discussions that military facilities were going to start providing abortion services. Right? And I was like, what do I do? I worked in the admissions. I'd be admitting them for the procedure. Now, they're going to be admitted with or without me. Right? They're going to be, and whether this guy gives them the drugs, they're going to get the drugs. So now when I was younger then, so I just basically said, look, I'm not doing it. You can kick me out. I'm not going to do it. I probably didn't handle it the best way, but I'm like, it's not happening. Okay, there's no way I'm going to fill out that paperwork and say, hey, hope it all works out for you, because I know you're getting ready to kill a human life. So, but in that situation, I never got things worked where it never really came to fruition and never happened, and I ended up in a different job where I didn't have to do it anyway. If it did happen, I can't remember how it was a big controversy. I don't remember how it all played out. But those are difficult situations. Christians can find themselves in very difficult situations. And guess what's needed? Wisdom. Not just wisdom. He's almost arguing for what kind of wisdom? He's kind of arguing for the wisdom of the world as well as godly wisdom, right? Because he's connecting it to whom? The serpent, right? In other words, the world is very clever. We need to be clever. And sometimes, I've said it so many times, I'm usually more impressed sometimes with the conversation of an atheist than I am with Christians, because sometimes I'm like, man, Christians are dumb. That shouldn't be the case. We're supposed to be the smart ones. Right? We supposedly have access to truth, right? We should be worrying about these big questions. And you'll get, I don't care about thinking about that stuff. Well, okay, why did God give you a brain? For something, right? Use it for His glory. Okay, so there's a great need. Now, again, that's just one situation. I don't even know what to tell that guy working in that pharmacy. I don't even know what the right answer is. Now, part of me says, your job is to do it. You got to do your job. It's not your place now to turn your job into a church, and you're going to start counseling these people on morality, because that's not what you're paid to do. Your check doesn't say morality director. And Greg Koukl did point out, well, wait a minute. What if someone walks up and has, some kind of birth control and places it on the counter? Are you going to ask them what they're going to use that for? Now, he said, well, it's different because this one does harm. Yeah, but it's still a moral question. Right. Well, just so many. What if it's an opioid? Opioid addiction is rampant. So I just say, whenever a business gets into the realm of dictating morality, I don't like that idea, right? Hey, You know, even, and I know I always make Christians mad on this, but even as a baker, you're a baker and you don't want to make a cake. Well, come on. I mean, that's your job to make a cake. Well, I'm only going to make cakes. Well, you're going to make, so how are you going to do this? Hey, you need a wedding cake. You ever been divorced? I'm sorry, I can't make that cake. Wait, have y'all engaged in premarital sex before you, I'm sorry, I can't make the, are you going to just start asking every moral question about the cake? Or are you just going to decide, well, if that's the case, so, now, what if you go to Denny's, you know, on a Sunday, like, did you just come from church? We don't serve people who just came from church. Christians would be uproar. It would be like, we're being persecuted. Well, wait a minute. If one can deny service, like, I don't like that idea. You have a job, right? And what's your job? Well, if it's a pharmacy, it's to give the drugs that are there. It's not your, you know, right. Give them courteous service and be absolutely perfect in what you give, because it's dangerous to give people wrong drugs, wrong amounts, and wrong doses. Do the best you can. Now, I know that's not easy, but that requires wisdom. And again, I'm not even saying that my perspective is 100% right, because I understand those are difficult situations. But we've seen that a lot in culture recently, all the way up to the Supreme Court, right? You know, about the baker, what he can and can't do, that he ultimately won. I'm not a fan of it, because I'm just waiting for a non-Christian business to turn it against Christians. Remember, the rights we take away from others are the rights we take away from ourselves. Remember, that's you know, remember it was Christians running around in the 80s and 90s wanting to censor and ban everything. That song shouldn't be able to play it on radio. That record shouldn't be able to be sold. And then all of a sudden, when they want to take us down from YouTube, we get upset and say we're being persecuted. We're the ones who were calling for censorship, because we thought we get to determine what you get to hear and what you get to see. My position on these things always puts me outside the realm of Christianity. But what is being demonstrated here is we need something. And what do we need? We need great wisdom. Everybody see that? All right. What's the third thing that we could outline in this verse? We got the first part. What's the first part? I send you forth as a sheep in the midst of wolves. What's that in our outline? Dangerous reality. Second, be ye therefore wise as serpents. What is that? A great need. What's the great need? We need to be intelligent, prudent, and thoughtful. Intelligent, prudent, and thoughtful. That's how I wrote it down in my notes. Intelligent, prudent, and thoughtful. Right. Now, there's one thing left in the verse. What is it? Okay, it says harmless as doves, right? Innocent as doves is what the NIV has, okay? Innocent, harmless, all right? What do you think this is? We got a dangerous reality, a great need. I have an important balance. We need a balance here, right? We got to use wisdom, but what's got to come with our wisdom? Harmless as a dove, I have it written down this way. Unmixed, pure, without a mixture of evil. Innocent. We have to make sure that our motives are pure, our actions are right, that we're doing something for the right reason, for the right motive. Sometimes we forget motive when dealing with wolves, right? What we should ultimately want, and when we're dealing with the world, is hopefully, one, to demonstrate the truth of Christ. That's important. We want to show the love of Christ. And what we ultimately should want is for them to become a Christian, not to drive them away. Now, sometimes, though, the confrontation still has to be ugly, but we just have to make sure that we're being innocent and we're being pure. There is a great need for balance in those situations. For example, this pharmacist on the phone call on Stand to Reason this evening. I mean, how are you going to look at that person and say, hey, I need to talk to you for a second? And then pull them aside and basically start calling into question their decision. Now, I understand the motive may be pure, but man, can you see how messed up that is? I mean, I would take a great offense to that. I'm trying to get medicine. The last thing you usually want is someone to have some major conversation. The best you can do, and this is what most all pharmacists do, is, do you have any questions in regards to this medication? And then if they start asking questions, you can say, okay, let's talk about this. Yes, there's a danger with this medication, because once you start it in a prolonged period of time, you may do irreversible damage and your child can never change their mind. That's scary. Now, you can point that out because that's a true danger of the drug. But just to pull someone aside because you don't agree with the moral thing, is that pure? Is that innocent? Is that harmless? The motive is right, but it comes across more as I'm telling you what to do, not that I'm going to help you, because you don't even have a relationship with the person. You're not their doctor, you're not their therapist, you're not their counselor, you're not their priest, you're not their pastor. You're just some guy who's handing out drugs behind a counter. Now, you have your own standards and beliefs, but you're not dispensing standards and beliefs in philosophy. You see, that's a difficult situation. I feel bad for the guy. I mean, that's a horrible situation, but anything in the medical world right now, people are going to have to come up with some, how they're going to handle these things. So those are the three parts of this passage. All right, everybody got it? What's the first part? Dangerous reality. What's second? A great need. And third, an important balance. Now, here's the problem. We have 20 minutes. Right? And the minute I start, are we going to get done? No, but I'll knock out enough of it that then if we come back to finish it, I won't have very much left. So what do I do? So I think this is what we're going to do. This is going to be a first time in history. You may want to write this down. We may end way early tonight. All right? So, but it's the only way to handle this. Like if we turn to the passage in Luke, the minute I just start trying to put it together, we're going to run out of time. So why not just put it together in one complete sermon instead of do this, right? Because this lays the foundation. So here's what we need to take away from this evening. Just as the disciples were sent into a world where there was great danger, everyone in this room who claims to be a Christian, you're sent into a world with great danger, right? And what are those dangers facing us? Wolves, and how do we identify the wolves? Let's see if you all remember. False teachers, religious authority, and civil authority. Okay, and then family. That is a great danger. Would everyone agree that provides a great danger? Now, you need to be aware of that danger, but what else do you need to do? Not just being aware of the danger, not just being on the lookout for that danger, he's not even telling you necessarily how to discern the danger. He tells you, though, you have a great need, and what do you need while you're traveling through this danger? Wisdom. Right? Remember how, my notes, how I described it? I'll give you intelligence, prudent, thoughtful. Intelligent, prudent, and thoughtful. You need that. You need intelligence. You have to what does it mean to be thoughtful? Think it through. Contemplate it. This is what always got me in trouble when I did the News in Focus, is I would take a news story, right, and I would think it through. And when I thought it through, typically I found myself opposed to how Christians were viewing the situation, and people would get mad at me. I'm like, what? I'm just trying to think it through. But you're not allowed to think it through. You're just supposed to go with the party line. And the party line, though, is not always right. Okay? That's just true. The party line is not always right. The Christian line is not always the correct one. And so we have to think it through. And then, so we need to be, what's prudent? Okay? Wise. Right? Wisdom, how do we sometimes define wisdom? The correct application of knowledge. It's one thing to be really smart, but you've got to be able to use that intelligence, that knowledge in a correct way. Does that make sense? So we've all been sent into a dangerous reality. We all know the danger, and we know what is needed. Okay? Not only is there a great need, what else do we need? The third point of our outline? An important balance. We need to balance out. Man, I'm right here in the midst of wolves, man, and I'm ready to fight, okay? All right, okay, now we'll slow down. Got to be as wise as a serpent. Wise as a serpent, okay. Now, do I use my wisdom to trick them, to manipulate them, to get one up on them on a debate? Now, I've been guilty of that, right? I mean, a lot of people who worked with me were always the ones afraid to, like, if he speaks, stop talking. Right? Because I wouldn't speak. If I don't know the subject, I don't speak. I'll just let the conversation go. It could be politics. It could be, I'm not saying a word. But the minute I went, they were like, oh no, it's coming. And then I'd be like, you're wrong here, you're wrong here, you're wrong here, you're wrong here, you're wrong here. Or I would do even, and in some ways this is bad, I would start asking questions, and I would be using the questions in order to set them up right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask this question. That's going to lead to this answer. This answer will lead to this question. And then when they're done, I'm going to be like, you're stupid. I just literally walked you through proving your own position incorrect. Now, it's good that I wanted to confront and show them, but sometimes it was almost more, I would find a game. Like people would always get worried because like if I was sitting at work and I'm like, man, I need something intellectually stimulating. I'd start walking around and I'd just stop and ask a question. They'd be like, oh no, I'm not answering your questions. I'm not answering your questions. Okay, I'm not answering your questions because you're going to get me so confused. The woman who worked right next to me, who worked for me, who was the part of the worship team at New Hope, she would get so irritated at me because I'd ask this question and this question and this question and this question. She'd be like, just stop asking questions, right? And then she would say, well, what do you think? I'm like, I'm not giving you the answer. And then that would drive her crazy. And then there was one woman who just would lose her, she would blow up and start crying and screaming at me, and I'd be like, oh, man. And sadly, there were times I enjoyed it. I'm not going to lie. But I'm saying, see, that's not balance, right? I had the intelligence. I had the wisdom to be able to go, okay, let's ask this question. But sometimes I found more joy in putting them in a situation where they could not defend their own position, showed how foolish their position was. I wasn't being harmless as a dove. Does that make sense? And sometimes intelligent people can fall into that trap because you feel like you got a leg up on this person, and then you can utilize that to your advantage. But what should I be trying to do? Help them see truth. Try to establish something. And sometimes it was more just an intellectual game because I needed some intellectual stimulation because I was, not being intellectually challenged with my job. So if I couldn't read a book, well, there's people. They got brains. I'm going to start the intellectual conversation. And then I would just, like how you do with a cat? I'd be like, come on. You're so dumb. Right? And that's evil. That's evil. I'm not pretending that it's not. It's evil. Right? No joke about it. That's evil. But you got to be honest with it. Because that demonstrates having one is not good without the other. That's why I called it an important balance. An important balance. We've all been there. Now, some of you may be good on the harmless as a dove side. You would never harm anyone. You're super nice and you want to be everyone's friend. You just won't ever use enough wisdom to ever demonstrate to them that they're absolutely, 3 seconds away from burning in hell. They're heretics, and you're like, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to offend them. Okay, well, you should probably care about their eternal soul more than you care about your friendship, right? Now, you need a little bit more of the other side. Does that make sense? Everyone here has their balance, but you got to find that balance. We live in a fallen world. We're going to face weird situations. I think you face the situations more so as a young person, just entering into the work world, starting to make friends. You find yourself, high school, you find yourself in all kinds of odd situations. And then as a young adult, as you get older, your circle of people, it becomes smaller. You have less to do with people. You're probably pretty established in your job. And you sometimes, you don't have that same thing. But the danger is still there. The danger is sometimes how it affects the way you think. Does that make sense? But you need to look for those opportunities to speak to a world that is definitely in trouble. But we just have to be honest with where our weakness and strength is. Right? We just have to be honest. Right? So, what are the 3 points? A dangerous reality, number 2. An important need, number 3. Or a great need, I think is what I said, and then an important balance. Keep that in mind. Now, what we're going to do is we'll go to Luke next time, and guess what's going to happen in Luke? Jesus is going to be confronted with a situation with some religious leaders who are trying to play gotcha, which happens all the time. Well, Jesus usually demonstrates being wise and being harmless. So we'll see how Jesus plays out this situation that is mentioned in Luke. All right, that's where we wanted to go. But okay, well, we probably won't. Okay. I don't know. It's pretty short. It's a pretty straightforward story. All right, let's pray. Look at this. I want everyone, we're ending early. Everyone on the internet, please write this down. Anyone ever says, I can't end early, are liars, and they are of their father, the devil. Okay? Because I have proved that I can once. All right? All right, let's pray. Lord God, we come before you this evening. Lord, you want us to be in the world, but you don't want us to be of it. Lord, when we engage the world and all of these dangers, we have a mixed results. Sometimes we handle it great. Sometimes we mess up so bad. Help us be careful. Help us take these lessons we just learned from Matthew 10 and help us just, do everything we can to represent you correctly, to help people, to seek their good and not us winning a debate. Help us handle it perfectly and forgive us for all the times we have failed so miserably and how to handle all the dangers that the world presents. There'll be more coming our way as society continues to change. This verse may become more important than it's ever been, considering how the world continues to move away from Christianity. And it's something we will need to think about a lot and apply to our lives constantly. And we ask this in Jesus' name. And God's people said,